The Strix G16 is a great gaming laptop, but ASUS have done AMD dirty with this one. There are two versions of the Strix this year, AMD or Intel, but they're completely different laptops. The Intel version has a brand new design and is better in almost every way, while the AMD version gets sloppy seconds with the older design. So is the newer Strix with Intel worth buying, or should you get the older model to get AMD's X3D V-Cache? I've compared everything to find out in this review. Both versions of the Strix have grey metal lids and plastic interiors, and build quality feels equally great from both. The plastic keyboard deck feels solid with either laptop. The older AMD design is easier to open as the front of its lid sticks out a little, but the Intel one wasn't difficult to get into. The hinges feel the same on both, only a little flex when pushing back too far. Otherwise they're smooth and sturdy with no screen wobble when typing. The Intel version is a bit deeper and a little thicker compared to the AMD model, but side by side they look quite similar in size. They're both on the thicker side compared to other 16-inch gaming laptops, and more in line with bigger 18-inch models that we've tested. The AMD version weighs a little less than the Intel version, and I do notice it when picking them up, but it's honestly not much different. The weight of both is fairly average as far as 16-inch gaming laptops go. Not quite on the higher or lower side, just right in the middle. Both configurations have the same 280-watt charger, and they're notably lighter compared to ASUS's higher tier SCAR 16, which is the next level up from the Strix G16. Both of my Strix G16s are spec'd the same, apart from the CPU difference, of course. They've both got Nvidia's RTX 5070 Ti laptop GPU, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 16-inch 240Hz screen. But the Strix G16 is available with higher and lower tier CPUs and GPUs with the link below. And if it has a good sale, we'll list it on our gaminglaptop.deals website so you can save money. As far as I can tell, both laptops have the same chiclet keyboard with per key RGB backlighting. All keys and secondary functions get lit up, and key brightness can be adjusted between 3 levels or turned off with the F2 and F3 shortcut keys. The F4 Aura key can be used to cycle through the first 5 effects, but there are 12 built-in effects available through the lighting tab of ASUS's included Armory Crate software. Adjusting the brightness or built-in effect affects both the keyboard and the light bars. The newer Intel design has a 360-degree light bar that surrounds the whole laptop, while the older AMD design runs along the front and a little around the corners. The keyboards are the same with 1.9mm of key travel. The keys don't really feel clicky, but they're not mushy either, and I still liked typing on either. The touchpad is way bigger on the Intel model, and I thought it felt a bit nicer to click, but the AMD one works perfectly fine. They've both got a numpad mode if you need to do some data entry between games, but you can disable that in software to prevent turning it on by accident, because when it's enabled, you can't use the touchpad to move the mouse. Port layout is very similar on both laptops, but the AMD model has its ports closer to the front due to the side air exhaust vents. The Intel model also has an extra Type A port on its left, faster 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and both its Type-C ports are faster Thunderbolt 5. Both Type-Cs on Intel can charge the laptop, while it's just one on the AMD. And AMD also uses a barrel plug charger, while Intel is rectangular. All display outputs on both laptops connect directly to the Nvidia graphics, and you can't change that by toggling Optimus on or off. So expect more fan noise with a monitor connected, even in lighter tasks, as you can't use the more power-efficient integrated graphics. Getting inside the older AMD design requires taking out 11 Phillips head screws of 2 different lengths. The screw down the front right helps lift up the panel to get in, but I still needed pry tools to open it. I'll leave a link to these ones I use below. All I can say is at least the older design doesn't have a ribbon cable attaching the motherboard to the bottom panel anymore. The Intel model is way better though. window. You can get inside without any tools. Simply slide the notch towards the front to the side, then pull the panel to the front and it comes right off. Inside, both laptops have 2 memory slots, 2 M.2 storage slots, and there's upgradable Wi-Fi. But Wi-Fi is the only part you can't access without tools in the Intel model. To get to that, you've got to remove 16 Phillips head screws, then you can take off a second bottom panel. Just watch out for that ribbon cable that connects it to the motherboard for the RGB light bar. I don't like the ribbon cable design, but I can look past it as you only have to deal with it if you're changing Wi-Fi. And the compromise of easy RAM and SSD access is more important. Wi-Fi performance was way better on the Intel laptop, as it's paired with superior Intel Wi-Fi 7, so you'll be less likely to upgrade it anyway, while the AMD version has MediaTek 6E. To be fair, the AMD one is still faster than gigabit, and you should be able to swap the card for like $20. Both of the SSD slots in the Intel model have ASUS's Q-Latch system, which means swapping the M.2 drives doesn't need tools either. Very cool. One of the M.2 slots in the AMD laptop supports faster PCIe Gen 5, while both slots in the Intel laptop support Gen 5. Speeds from the installed 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD were good from both laptops, and they've both got the exact same model of drive installed. Both of my laptops came with DDR5 5600 memory, but the Intel version can be upgraded to DDR5 6400, while the AMD one cannot. The upgrade score is good on both laptops, as they both have 2 memory slots, 2 M.2 storage slots with room for chips on both sides, and upgradable Wi-Fi. But I give a whole extra point to the ASUS laptops with the Easy Open feature, because that's great and needs to be encouraged. Please, every other brand, steal that design. There are speakers underneath towards the front on the left and right sides. They definitely sound better on the Intel model. There's just more bass and they're less tinny at higher volume, but there is a small amount of wrist-rest vibration on both. The Latencymon results were a bit better on the AMD version in our 5-minute idle test. They both play this sound by default on boot, but you can disable it through the Armoury Crate software or BIOS. Both Strix laptops are powered by a 90Wh battery, and it's the exact same model number in both. Panel Power Saver is enabled by default, which automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate to 60Hz when you unplug the charger to save power. This is why the screen flashes black, and it goes back to 240Hz when you plug back in. You can enable battery care mode through the ASUS software to limit the maximum charge level to 80%, which helps improve the longevity of the battery. Or you could also enable eco mode through Armoury Crate, which disables the NVIDIA graphics and may help improve battery life if you don't need the power-hungry NVIDIA GPU. Battery life was better with the Intel model, lasting 29% longer in the YouTube video playback test, or 53% longer with the game running. In my experience, AMD's more powerful HX processors aren't very good when it comes to battery life, as they have outdated integrated graphics, at least compared to their more efficient chips, which do very well. I also need to note the AMD laptop was running the game below the 30 FPS frame cap in all performance modes. It was at more like 25 to 27 FPS with obvious stuttering, so gaming on battery on AMD is a worse experience, while also not lasting as long. The Intel version lost less of its battery charge while asleep for 24 hours, but this isn't a fair comparison with all of the other laptops unless they have the same sized battery. Here's how much battery power was lost on average per hour, which is a fair comparison. The AMD-based Strix was one of the worst results tested so far, but this seems to apply to all of ASUS's Strix models compared to most other laptops. Let's check out thermals next. Both laptops have 3 fans, but the newer Intel design gets a vapor chamber cooler, while the AMD version has a standard heat pipe design. The Intel model has liquid metal on both both the CPU and GPU, while the AMD model only has it on the GPU. Air comes in through the keyboards on both, and through holes on the bottom panels, though the Intel one has more ventilation. The AMD version can blast your mouse hand with hot air, while the Intel one has much smaller vents that are used for air intake. They both have air exhausts running along the entire back of the machine. ASUS's Armory Crate software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are silent, performance, turbo, and manual. Both turbo and manual modes apply this overclock to the GPU, but only manual mode lets you customize it. Manual mode also lets you customize CPU and GPU power limits, temperature limits, and gives you some control over the fan curves. Anytime we've tested manual, everything except overclocks has been maxed out. You can also use the F5 shortcut to swap between the 4 different performance modes. Let's start out with the AMD model. Temperatures are fine at idle, and the rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. These temps are looking quite good for the most part. The GPU is perhaps a little warm in performance, turbo, and manual modes, but it's not hitting Nvidia's 87-degree thermal throttle limit. Meanwhile, the processor is cool, only peaking at 85 degrees Celsius in manual mode, as that boosts CPU power. Strangely, running with the lid closed was slightly warmer than lid open, which is odd given some air comes in through the keyboard. Using a basic metal stand lowered temps a bit more, while the cooling pad I test with, linked below, could lower temps further. Nvidia's RTX 5070 Ti laptop GPU maxes out at 140 watts, and the AMD version of the Strix can hit full power in turbo and manual modes no problem. Turbo mode caps the CPU at 55 watts, but manual mode gives it an extra 20 or so watts of power, with all power sliders maxed out. And here are the clock speeds reached during these same tests. Alright, Intel laptop next. It's cooler than the AMD laptop at idle, however, the Intel laptop also had lightly audible fans while idling, while AMD's fans were completely off. The Intel laptop is cooler than the AMD laptop in performance and turbo modes, though that's not too surprising considering it has better cooling too. In particular, the 5070 Ti GPU is around 10 degrees cooler in the Intel laptop, while the processors are similar. That said, Intel's CPU gets hotter in manual mode, and unlike the AMD one, Intel was a touch warmer with the lid closed. Though strangely, unlike the AMD one, the Intel laptop was slightly warmer with the stand, and the temps with the cooling pad are warmer on Intel too. This seems to be because the Intel laptop pumps more power to the CPU in manual and turbo mode with the cooling pad running at higher RPM. It's like as soon as it detects that it's got more airflow and better cooling, it just sacrifices GPU power and gives it to the CPU instead. Either way, turbo mode normally runs the GPU at the full 140 watt power limit, just like the AMD version. And Intel also has the same 55 watt CPU power limit too. Clock speeds from Intel weren't too different on the CPU or GPU in turbo mode. We only get bigger variances in those odd cases with manual mode or the cooling pad. Here's how an actual game performs with the different performance modes in use on the AMD laptop. I've got the native results in purple and DLSS upscaling on balanced in red to boost performance. There's really not too much of a difference between performance, turbo, or manual modes, while silent mode drops back quite a bit. But then on the Intel laptop, silent mode still offers similar performance to performance mode, at least with DLSS on balanced in the red bar. I double-checked silent mode on both laptops, but got the same results. There's also a bit more of a gap in FPS between performance, turbo, and manual modes on Intel, but performance mode still delivers good FPS here. I also need to note that while gaming on Type-C looks like it's performing well, both laptops were drawing power from the battery. We're talking about 5% battery loss after just a few minutes, so it's not sustainable in the highest performance mode.
The CPU can use more power in a CPU-only workload like Cinebench, where the GPU is idle. AMD was only ahead in multi-core performance with the Type-C charger connected. Otherwise, Intel had an edge in single-core and multi-core performance at all setting levels. Granted, the difference isn't that big. We're talking about a 7% improvement with Intel in both cases in manual mode. The Intel Strix holds up surprisingly well compared to all other laptops tested, only beaten slightly by a couple of bigger 18-inch models, while the AMD Strix is close to the only other 9955 HX3D laptop we've tested so far, and still ahead of some laptops with Intel's 275HX inside. In other words, both laptops offer excellent CPU performance. Performance lowers if we unplug the charger and run on battery power, but not by much. And both Strix laptops have actually broken our records for best scores in this test. So great performance on battery power from both laptops, just not on the AMD one in a game. As for keyboard temps, most laptops I test are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle. The Intel version is way below this and feels cold, but its fans are running while AMD's aren't. And AMD still feels relatively cool here anyway. They're both still cool with the stress test running in silent mode, perhaps a little edge to AMD, though AMD's fans were also slightly louder in silent mode too. There's not much of a practical difference in the higher performance mode. They're both running very cool to the touch. It's a similar deal in turbo mode. Both laptops are warmer right up the back, but you don't need to touch there, and I confirmed the keys you would press felt fine. They're both running super cold in manual mode with the fans maxed out, but as you'll hear shortly, they're also quite loud like this too. The hottest point of the keyboard was cool when compared to most other laptops tested. ASUS's higher tier Strix G16 and 18 are nearby too, so it would appear that ASUS's laptops run cool. But of course, it depends on how loud the fans are blasting. Let's have a listen. The fans were completely off when idling in silent mode on AMD, but lightly audible on Intel. The Intel laptop is a little louder with both running in turbo mode, but they're not too bad compared to most other laptops tested, especially considering that they both had some of the coolest keyboards. This means they're able to feel cool to the touch under heavy load without needing insanely loud fans to pull it off. And ASUS's higher tier SCAR laptops were about the same, while Lenovo laptops I'd classify as competition were a bit louder. The Intel version of the Strix was a little louder than AMD in all modes except silent. Manual mode with the fans maxed out is quite loud on both laptops, but especially on the Intel laptop. You'll definitely want noise cancelling headphones if you plan on using that. I think performance mode is a much better sweet spot in terms of fan noise, as both laptops still deliver great gaming performance here, though the FPS from the AMD Strix was better than Intel in performance mode, while it also ran the fans quieter too. The Intel and AMD versions of the Strix both use the exact same 2560 by 1600 240Hz panel, and the screen looks great. They've both got good color gamut and decent contrast. ASUS advertises it at 500 nits, and both of my panels hit this at full brightness. It's just just a complete coincidence that the AMD one is a little brighter. This is what I call the panel lottery. Basically, there's always a little variance, even between two screens that are the same model. They're fairly bright and much nicer compared to the lower tier TUF I covered a couple of weeks ago. They're brighter than most of the OLED options, with the exception being Lenovo laptops, as Lenovo are using brighter OLED panels than other brands this year. Otherwise, if you want significantly more brightness, you'll need to step up to Mini LED, which is available in the higher tier Strix G16. Backlight bleed was fine for the most part. My AMD model was a little more patchy, but this will vary between panels and there's some luck involved. Panel overdrive is enabled by default in Armoury Crate. This gives us an average screen response time of about 4 milliseconds, which is a great result for a 240Hz screen. But there is some overshoot and undershoot, which can be removed by turning panel overdrive off. But I don't think it's worth it for the slower 8.7 millisecond response time. I only tested response time on one of the screens, as it takes some time and I wasn't too interested in demonstrating more of what the panel lottery has to offer us. It's a fast screen, great for esports gaming, though if you want the best, you'll be looking at OLED, while Mini LED panels are typically a bit slower as they take longer to light up their backlight zones. Total system latency was good on both laptops. This is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on screen in Counter-Strike 2. The AMD laptop can reach a 29% higher average frame rate in this game due to the 3D V-cache, and spitting out more frames results in less latency. Both laptops have advanced Optimus, allowing you to automatically get better FPS in games without a reboot. They've also got the classic muck switch, aka ultimate mode, but that needs a reboot, and considering it doesn't change which GPU the ports connect to on either laptop, there's no point using it. They both have G-Sync when Optimus is off, and Adaptive Sync is available from the integrated graphics with Optimus on, so no screen tearing as long as your frame rate is above 48. The AMD version has a 1080p camera above the screen, but unfortunately it does not have IR for Windows Hello Face unlock, and this is how it sounds while typing on the keyboard. The Intel version also has a 1080p camera, but in my opinion, it doesn't look as good compared to the AMD one. However, the Intel version does have IR for Windows Hello Face unlock, unlike AMD. And here's how this one sounds while typing on the keyboard. Now let's find out if AMD or Intel is better for gaming. We've tested both laptops with these same settings. Cyberpunk 2077 was running great at 1080p ultra settings, but the AMD version had a slight edge. It's just a 3% difference in average FPS, and honestly, not something you'd be likely to notice in a blind test. The gap gets smaller at the higher 1440p resolution, which is closer to the native resolution both screens support, and better represents gaming on these laptops. The differences between processors matter less here, as higher resolutions typically rely more on the GPU, and that's the same here. Alan Wake 2 is fairly GPU heavy, even at 1080p, which likely explains why there's an even smaller difference between the two Strix G16 laptops. In any case, they're performing similarly compared to other full-powered 5070 Ti laptops we've tested. Good results. The Intel laptop is slightly ahead at 1440p, but it's less than a 2 FPS difference, which is small enough to be within the margin of error range. And again, not a big enough difference that you'd notice in practice. The AMD Strix was a blazing 4.20% faster than the Intel version in Black Myth Wukong at 1080p. And of course, that's sarcasm. AMD still has a small lead at 1440p. However, the Strix isn't quite our best 5070 Ti result, but it's up there. It's a similar story with ray tracing and upscaling enabled. In most cases, there's not much of a difference across these three games, but DLSS still makes RT possible with above 60 FPS at 1440p from the 5070 Ti. To be fair, the three games that we use for comparing in our reviews aren't the best for CPU comparisons, but when I previously
compared these processors in 29 different games. At 1080p, the AMD chip was 16% faster on average, or 8% faster at 1440p. So AMD's X3D does offer a nice boost when it comes to gaming. It just depends on the game, the resolution, and the settings used.
The AMD Strix in red was generally ahead in the 3D mark tests, but not always. Creator performance is basically identical in GPU workloads like Blender, but the AMD processor does better in Adobe Photoshop and DaVinci Resolve. In the case of Photoshop, it smashed out records, so that workload clearly enjoys AMD's 3D V-Cache. The BIOS looks fancy, and on the Intel laptop, there's not much in the way of customization and shooting, just a little CPU undervolting. The AMD version, on the other hand, offers CPU overclocking with manual overclocking or precision boost overdrive. But as usual, we don't bother testing manual overclocks, as the amount you can do will vary between each chip anyway. Linux support was excellent on both laptops. The only slight hiccup was that I wasn't able to connect to my 6 GHz Wi-Fi network on the AMD laptop, but 2.4 and 5 GHz were fine.
Prices of both laptops will change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and for current sales. If either of these laptops have a good sale, you'll find them on our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that daily to include all of the best sales, so check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop with that link below. We're getting close to Black Friday, so consider joining our mailing list so you don't miss any deal alerts. At the time of recording in mid-October, it's hard to find all versions of the Strix in stock. Through ASUS's US store, the Strix G16 with 9955HX processor goes for $2,400 US, while the 3D version costs an extra $100. Putting aside the fact that this is way too much to be spending on a 5070 Ti gaming laptop, I think $100 more to get 3D over non-3D is worth it. Unfortunately, there's no pricing for the Intel model, and I haven't seen it available in most stores. I found the 9955HX version on sale for $1,980, and Best Buy has an older non-3D AMD processor on sale for $1,600. But it comes with a lower quality 1920 by 1200 screen, which isn't the best matchup for the 5070 Ti. So right now, the Strix G16 is quite an expensive laptop. Ideally, I'd want to see a better deal like this Legion, $1,700 for the 5070 Ti with similar build quality, but an OLED screen. So is the Strix G16 worth buying, assuming you can find them at a good price? Let's summarize the good and the bad to find out. Starting with the good, both laptops have excellent thermals, both in terms of internals, and the keyboard temps just stay cool under heavy load. Build quality feels equally great from both. They've both got excellent CPU performance, both with the charger connected or on battery power, whether you go for Intel or AMD. The AMD processor's 3D V-Cache is great if you're gaming at 1080p or lower settings that aren't as GPU heavy. It's generally faster for content creator workloads, and there's a bit more CPU tuning available in BIOS. But apart from those small wins that the AMD laptop gets, the Intel version is better in pretty much every other way. The Intel version has a better vapor chamber cooler with more liquid metal and no hot air blowing on your mouse hands. The speakers are better on the Intel model, its camera has IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock, it's got faster Wi-Fi, and gaming on battery lasts much longer on Intel and isn't stuttery like it is on the AMD laptop. The Intel laptop has better RGB lighting, both of its M.2 slots support PCIe Gen 5 compared to just one of the slots in the AMD model, and the Intel version has more and faster ports in better locations. At the end of the day, ASUS's Strix G16 is a great gaming laptop with few downsides that I can recommend. But I think ASUS know they've got something good on their hands. performance, which is why these cost so much money. Bottom line, if you're stuck deciding between AMD and Intel, and they're priced about the same, honestly, I would get the Intel model without question. I'd even be willing to pay a little extra for it. The features offered by the Intel model are more beneficial and practical, and they outweigh the few ways where the AMD model does better. It would have been way better if the AMD processor was available in the newer chassis. That, combined with the fact that the AMD model goes up to RTX 5070 Ti graphics, while the Intel model goes up to 5080 graphics, confirms to me that ASUS doesn't really care about AMD here, which sucks for us buying these laptops because it's always better to have more options. And having the AMD model just unnecessarily held back like this just sucks. As a result, I would only consider the AMD version if it was much cheaper, or if I really wanted AMD's 3D V-Cache for better performance in specific games. I've compared the 9955HX3D in 29 games against Intel and AMD's non-3D processor, so check one of those out next if you're still deciding which CPU to get.